Hi, welcome to episode number 2 of this walking tour. The first episode, we were here in Aquatic Park. My goal is to eventually leave Aquatic Park and go up Russian Hill and then on to Nob Hill. I think this time there's just so much here in Aquatic Park that we are going to continue in Aquatic Park, and then next time we're going to make our way up to Russian Hill. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, you can go back and do that, or this episode should be able to stand alone. I'm standing where pin number A is in Aquatic Park, and I am facing towards Ghirardelli Square across the street from me. This is a view you have of where I'm standing towards the bay. In our last episode, we left off in 1907, and that's where we're going to start this episode. In 1907, Del Monte built the cannery over here on Hyde Street. The cannery is the building on either side of the H pin, taking up the entire large city block. I'm going to start walking towards the cannery and tell you about it on the way. The cannery is that brick building you can see in the distance. I misspoke in the introduction I gave. There was no Del Monte yet in 1907. It was the California Fruit Canners Association that bought the land to build the cannery right after the earthquake and fire of 1906. This was a perfect location for canning fruits and vegetables. They could easily be brought here on the existing rail lines from all over the Bay Area and the Central Valley, and by boat from the Sacramento River. There was also a large enough population in the city to provide workers, and the finished canned goods could be put on ships and delivered around the world. This is the building soon after it was finished. You can see where the trains almost come into the building and how close it is to the bay. By 1909, the California Fruit Canners Association cannery at this location was the largest fruit and vegetable canning plant in the world. Over 200,000 cans could be produced per day, and around 2,500 people were employed here. This is workers bringing fruit in from rail cars. Here you can see women working on the fruit processing line, and if you look close enough, you can see that those are halved and pitted peaches on the conveyor belt. This is workers sealing the cans. Every can had to be hand soldered shut. In 1916, the company changed its name to the California Packing Corporation, and its products were branded Del Monte. The cannery closed in 1937, and it was used as a warehouse for a number of smaller businesses until the early 1970s, when it was turned into many shops and restaurants. It continues to have shops and restaurants today, as well as a hotel and a museum. This is a view of the side of the building we've been looking at. Hyde Street Pier, which is off to my left, was built in 1922, and it was considered part of the 101 freeway. And it was the main car ferry port that took cars to Sausalito and also to Berkeley. You can see the pier starts here pretty much at the end of the cannery building we were just looking at, and then goes out into the bay. Until 1922, there was no need for a car ferry going to the rest of the Bay Area. Until then, people just walked onto ferries, and all of the ferries left over a mile away at the ferry building in downtown San Francisco. The last car ferry that left from Hyde Street Pier was on May 27th, 1937, the day that the Golden Gate Bridge opened. Today, the pier is part of the San Francisco Maritime National Historic Park and has several historic ships on it. As you can see, it's closed now because of COVID. Here's some cars waiting in line for the ferry to arrive. And this is the part of the pier that jutted out into the bay where cars would be loaded onto the ferries. The first real step to turning this area into a park was in 1929 when the city finally built what's now known as Municipal Pier, which is the pier out there, which created a protected cove so that it would be better for swimming and for rowing and for protecting anchored boats. All right, I'm going to walk over to and then down Municipal Pier. Here's the map. You can see where I am and where I'm going. And on the way, let's talk about the long process of turning this place into a park. People have been trying to save the cove as a park since swimming and rowing clubs built their clubhouses here in 1895. It was extremely difficult, though, because they were up against the city and the railroads who wanted to fill in the cove and use it for business. The swimming clubs formed the Aquatic Park Improvement Organization in 1909 and began lobbying the city to create a park. Even with this lobbying effort, the city continued to pour fill in the bay, and as I mentioned in the last episode, the Beltline was allowed to build rails across the cove in 1914. In 1917, the city finally agreed that this area should be turned into a park, and they worked to make that happen by acquiring most of this land from the Southern Pacific in trade for other land in the city. There were many proposals on how to turn this area into a park in the early 1920s. Here's drawings of a couple of those proposals. But it wasn't really until 1929 when this pier, the Municipal Pier, was built that the process started. Here you can see the finished pier. And here we are at the end of the pier with a view of downtown San Francisco and the Hyde Street Pier. The Municipal Pier is now a threatened landmark. You might have noticed that a large portion of it is shut down on my way here. On the bay side, there is lots of weather damage that needs to be fixed, and if it is not, the pier is going to have to be permanently closed. This is the view of the bay you have from Municipal Pier. During the Great Depression, off to my right here, what is now the Maritime Museum, the Aquatic Park Bathhouse was built. You can see on the map how close I am to the bathhouse. I'll tell you about it a little bit while I make the walk over there. The Aquatic Park Bathhouse and the parks surrounding it were built at the same time, and they were a joint project of the City of San Francisco and the Works Project Administration, or better known as the WPA. The WPA was a New Deal program designed to build infrastructure and employ out-of-work Americans, including artists. They started building the bathhouse and the park in 1937, and it took 2 years. It was done in January of 1939. The building was built to look like an ocean liner, and here you can kind of see this end of the building was made to look like the bow of a ship. This is the building under construction in 1937, and here is essentially the same view of the building today. The building was designed to be public space, and artists were hired by the WPA to paint murals on the inside and do tile work on the outside of the building and on the floors. Here's one of the murals that's been recently restored on the inside. And here's some tile work on the outside back deck. This is one of the 3 huge skylights for the basement, which housed locker rooms, changing rooms, and showers for swimmers. Bleachers and large towers to house speakers were also built for big public events. After occupation by the military during World War II, that lasted from 1941 through 1948, the building became home to the San Francisco Maritime Museum and still is today, and it also houses the country's first senior center. The last couple of things I want to tell you about are personal. The first is what song is in my head every time I walk into Aquatic Park here. In 1983, MTV was kind of new, and my sister had it on TV continually, and I couldn't stand most of the music there. And every so often, a Scorpion song called Someone Like You would come on, and the beginning of it is filmed right here in Aquatic Park. And it was one of the few songs I liked. So I hear that song every time I walk into this park. The second personal thing I want to show you and tell you about is this photograph of my family. This is a photograph of my father, a grandfather, and uncle in 1962 at a celebration of Columbus Day in Aquatic Park here. My father is the guy on the bottom left in the pyramid. My grandfather's driving the boat, and my uncle is the one who's the passenger in the boat. I think that is the end of the history we're going to cover here in Aquatic Park. And so I think I'm going to end this episode. Next episode, episode number 3, we're going to actually leave Aquatic Park and head up Russian Hill towards Nob Hill. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.